Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, May 11th, 2020, and today we're going to be continuing a chapter from our story Coup. Chapter 16. Feeding pigeons is not illegal, sir. After Christmas, Aggie came over as often as she could. As often as she could turned out to be every day. School was on break for the holiday. Octavia and Henry are supposed to be keeping an eye on me, she explained to Tully and Coup, but they'd much rather I stayed out of their hair. While Tully knit and cooked or did paperwork and ran errands, Aggie and Coup took over the living room. But it wasn't a living room anymore. It was a theater. They were performing ballet, though Aggie insisted they weren't real ballets because the steps weren't right. Coup insisted it didn't matter. Dance like this, Coup said on the third day Aggie came over, jumping in the air and touching both her toes. Real ballet? Don't care. Aggie had been trying to teach her about a ballet called Swan Lake, but Coup wasn't very interested. She had another idea for a ballet. Pigeon Roof, Coup said. Human words were coming faster and faster to her. About a girl who lives with a flock of pigeons on a roof. Then a pigeon gets hurt by a hawk and she has to save him and goes to live with humans. Tully's knitting needles went silent. Oops, Coup whispered. Aggie didn't seem to notice anything weird. I know Ballantine made up a lot of new ballets. I guess we could too. But honestly, it sounds more like modern dance, not ballet. Hawk me, said Coup. You dance and I catch you. Okay, but let me show you a chasse step first. It's like a hop. You can swoop like a hawk doing that, like this. A few days after Christmas, Coup managed to convince Tully to go back to the alley with more food for the hungry flock. All right, I don't want to be responsible for a pigeon famine. Tully sighed as they ate oatmeal with honey and pecans. But you're going to stay here with Aggie, got it? Her sister and brother can watch you for a bit. No, said Coup. I will come with you, Aggie, too. Absolutely not. Can you imagine what her parents would say? Coup couldn't. Aggie's parents were mysterious figures, rarely home and barely aware, it seemed, of what Aggie did most days. You can't go without me, Aggie exclaimed later that morning after Coup explained to her about the hungry pigeons who needed to be fed. I want to meet the flock Bert came from. Coup longed to say it was the flock she came from, too, but she was careful not to break Tully's rule, especially with Tully cleaning up from breakfast just a few feet away. Aggie, I don't think your parents would be okay with that, Tully said, clearing her throat. It's beyond Food Bazaar, near the rail yard. No problem, I'll ask. Aggie leaped up. My mom is home today, actually. 5 minutes later, Aggie was back. She was holding a clear bag of sliced bread and beaming. Not only did my mom say yes, she gave me this old bread for the birds. She says hi, Tully. Hooray, shouted Coup. Let's go. Tully put down her dish towel and sighed. I wish winter break was a month long, 2 months, Aggie said as they waited to cross the busy road between Tully's neighborhood and the rail yard. It was a warm winter day and most of the snow had melted. Everything was wet and the cars and signs and even the sidewalks were dazzling in the bright sun. Coup wished Queenie and Burr were here with her so she could show them how clean and bright everything was, but Tully had made her leave both at home. What school are you going to, Coup? Asked Aggie. Our turn, Tully said brightly, grabbing both their hands. Must look both ways, girls. But Aggie's question lingered. I'm at PS 278, you know, the big one near Food Bazaar, said Aggie. Are you going there too? Coup knew which school that was. She'd asked Tully about it one day when they passed by during recess. Tons of kids played in the yard, more kids than she'd ever seen anywhere at once. We're still figuring that out, Aggie, Tully said. I wasn't expecting Coup to be here this long, and enrolling in school takes a while. Coup looked at Tully, startled. She'd never mentioned going to school like it would really happen. I hope you go to my school, said Aggie. Maybe we could even be in the same class. School would be a lot better if we were together. I'm sure it would be, said Tully. Coup felt Tully's grip tighten on her hand. Tully stared down the street like she was searching for something far away. She did not look like she was sure of anything at all. When they reached the street the alley branched off from, Coup grabbed Aggie's hand and dashed ahead. Wait, Tully shouted after them, but Coup and Aggie ignored her. Coup showed Aggie how to pull the gate open on its chain and duck in. The alley was chilly and shadowed. Most of the snow was gone, leaving patches of slush and wet gravel, but there were still some Aggie's mouth dropped open. Where did you learn that? From the birds, said Coo. Throw the bread, they will come. They ripped open the sack and began tearing the bread into tiny pieces. Pigeons crowded around, jostling one another on the gravel to reach the food. That's new Tik-Tik, Coo said, pointing. There is Hoop, the old brownish one. That is Kaa. New human? Ignoring the bread, Ruhu landed on Coo's shoulder and stared suspiciously at Aggie. Face windows? Face windows, Coo laughed. Oh, glasses, those are. My new friend, her, she said, or tried to. Friend wasn't really a word in Pigeon. What she really called Aggie was her new flockmate. Humph, said Ruhu, and flew back up to the roof. He is a really grumpy pigeon, Coo said to Aggie. His name is Ruhu. Aggie was staring at her strangely. Are you talking to them? How? Aggie's mouth dropped open. That's amazing. It's secret. Don't run ahead, girls, huffed Tuli, finally catching up to them. And don't shout for the birds, please, Coo. I thought you knew better than that. Remember how we're not really allowed to be back here? If you can't stay calm and quiet, we'll have to leave. Coo stared at the jumble of birds and squeezed the bread bag in her hand. She felt heat rising up her cheeks. She glanced up at Tuli and was relieved to see she looked more nervous than angry. Tell me more of the birds' names, Coo, said Aggie. Coo pointed out Pook and Old Tik-Tik and several others. She was glad they had so much bread and the seed from Tuli's paper sack too, not only because the pigeons were clearly hungry, but also because eating kept them from trying to talk to her. She wasn't sure how she would explain her ability to Aggie, especially in front of Tuli. It's so creepy back here, Aggie peered at the boarded-up hut and the empty factory building. I didn't know there was stuff like this in our neighborhood. I wonder how long ago people abandoned this place. It's a little bleak, isn't it, said Tuli. But it's also peaceful. I've never felt in danger here. The rail yard is right over me on that fence, she said, pointing behind the hut. And there are always pigeons for company. They were down to the last slice of bread when they heard the sound of a car. There were rattles and thunks, then a big metallic creak. Someone is opening the gate. Tuli's eyes went wide, and she looked around the alley. That never happens. Girls, quick, back here. Tuli pulled Aggie and Coo behind the hut. A white van with black lettering on the side came bouncing down the alley in a crunch of gravel and parked about 20 feet up from the hut. The pigeons rose in panic and retreated to the roof. Aggie had stooped down and was peering through an evergreen bush. The city health department, she whispered. That's what the van says. Coo crawled down beside her. The snow was ankle deep and very cold on her hands and knees, even with her mittens and heavy corduroy pants. The health department, is that what you said, Aggie? Whispered Tuli. She stood behind the hut, shaking her head. How strange. Don't move, girls. Maybe they won't mind we're here, but I don't want to risk it. Let's just see if the van leaves quickly. What's the health department? Coo asked. Tuli put a finger to her lips and shook her head. Aggie started to say something and Tuli hissed, shh. The van did not leave quickly. Two men jumped out, slamming the doors. One man was like a telephone pole, tall and thin. The other was like a fire hydrant, short and squat. They wore dark blue pants and matching jackets with round logos and lettering on the back. The evergreen bush had a very strong pine odor. Coo felt her nose tickle. She just barely managed to hold back a sneeze, snorting into her mitten. As Coo watched, pinching her nose, the short man barked directions to the tall one, who huffled around the back of the van with a grim look. Hurry up, Frank. We're due over at the scrapyard in Willets Point in an hour for the next count. You gotta move faster. I'm hurrying, Stan. I'm hurrying. If that's hurrying, I don't want to know what slow looks like. Stan's voice hard and loud, like a honking horn. Frank hauled two bags out the back of the van. You've looked miserable ever since we started this project, Stan continued. What gives? Don't you kind of feel bad for them? Asked Frank. For the pigeons? They're rats with wings. Aggie shot Coo an anxious look. Coo looked back at her, confused. These men didn't seem very nice, but she wasn't sure why they would be Aggie worried either. Coo glanced the other way. Tuli was standing pressed against the hut with her eyes shut. Her hands were clasped together, and it looked like she was whispering something under her breath. Coo turned back to look at the men in the alley. They aren't hurting anyone, said Frank, especially not out here in the middle of nowhere. The rail yard was one of the places picked because it's out in the middle of nowhere. People won't notice and get upset while the mayor works out the details before it goes citywide. Stan scowled and jabbed a finger at Frank's chest. Mayor Doherty is doing a good thing. We're lucky to help him launch this project. Maybe. What's wrong with you, Frank? Sighing, Frank looked down at the ground. Then he squinted. Looks like there's already birdseed and bread here. Weird. What? Stan stared down too. Who put it there? We're the only guys assigned to the site. I don't know, I don't like this place, said Frank. It's spooky. This whole project gives me a bad feeling. Oh, whatever, we're wasting time, said Stan. Mayor Doherty's plan for the pigeons is going to make the whole city better. No ifs, buts, or maybes. Now, where's your click counter? We need to quit yakking so the pigeons will come back. Hand me the bread. The words tumbled through Koo's head. She only understood some of what they said. The short one was mad about something, and the tall one was sad. Something that involved pigeons. It didn't occur to her that it could be anything bad for the flock until she glanced at Tilly and then Aggie again, and saw their faces. Both looked wide-eyed and stricken. Koo's stomach flipped like a pancake. Stan tossed chunks of bread to the gravel. The pigeons were slowly returning to eat. Frank held a silver ball in one hand and was making it click over and over while he stared at the feasting birds. Suddenly, the itch in Koo's nose came back. She couldn't stop it this time. She sneezed. What was that? Said Stan. At Stan's holler, the pigeons abandoned the food for the roof. My count's ruined, Frank sighed. Someone's back here, said Stan. No one's supposed to be back here. A moment after Tilly, Aggie, and Koo were face to face with a scowling Stan. Good morning, ladies. You're trespassing on city property. Is that birdseed and bread? The short man scowled at the paper sack in Tilly's hand and the plastic bag with a single bread slice in it in Koo's. Are you feeding pigeons? Tilly had turned paler than new snow. Feeding pigeons is not illegal, sir, she said in a trembling voice. Trespassing is illegal, and you have children with you. That makes it double illegal in my book. Get going. Tilly mumbled apologies and scurried up the alley past the van, dragging Koo and Aggie behind her. Wait, Stan barked. Let me see your ID. Tilly skidded to a stop, her hand tightened around Koo's. Aggie sprinted ahead to the bend in the alley and looked back, jumping up and down in place. Of course, Tilly said very calmly. She let go of Koo's hand, pulled out her wallet, and handed Stan a small card. I don't drive. Stan's eyes grew very tiny as he studied the card, then handed it back to her. His nose twitched. How much did you and those kids hear, Miss Bettina Tooley? Excuse me? Tooley froze, just like the pigeons sometimes did when they knew there was no way out of a hawk's talons. I asked how long you were back there eavesdropping. Koo looked at the hut and was startled to see Ruhu perched there, observing them. None of the other pigeons had returned. You lost your voices or something? Said Stan. We love pigeons, Koo blurted out the words without thinking. Tooley stuck in her breath. I love pigeons too, sweetheart. Stan's suspicious sneer morphed into a sickly sweet smile. So does Mayor Doherty. We're here to help the city and the pigeons too. See that bread? We're also feeding them. We're working on a plan to make things better for everyone. Cleaner. Koo studied Stan. There was something about him she didn't like. Don't bother these people, Stan, said Frank. They're harmless. Let's keep moving. We can come back here and finish up with the real stuff later. We don't need a perfect count. Before Stan had a chance to ask any more questions, Tully turned and pushed a Koo ahead of her up the alley toward Aggie. Stay off city property, Grandma, Stan shouted after them. Next time I'm getting the cops. And that ends our chapter for today. We'll continue our story tomorrow. Bye.